Imagine coming home after a 3-month work assignment abroad, only to find that your bedroom no longer exists. Your personal space, transformed into someone else's fitness fantasy without your knowledge or consent. That's exactly what happened to me, Annabelle Thompson, last summer. But what my brother and his wife didn't realize when they converted my bedroom into their dream home gym was that they were about to teach me the most valuable lesson of my life: how to turn someone else's entitlement into my financial freedom. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. I've always been the responsible one in my family. While my younger brother Ryan chased dreams and dropped out of college twice, I worked my way through business school, graduated with honors, and landed a solid job at a marketing firm in Chicago. Our parents had passed away 5 years earlier, leaving their modest 2-bedroom house to both of us. Since Ryan was still finding himself at 26 and I had a stable income, we agreed that I would cover the mortgage payments while he contributed what he could to utilities. The arrangement worked well enough for the first few years. Ryan eventually met Melissa, a personal trainer with an infectious personality and ambitions to open her own fitness studio someday. When they got married in a small ceremony at Lake Michigan, I was genuinely happy for them. Ryan seemed to have finally found his direction, working part-time at a local bike shop while helping Melissa build her client base. 6 months after the wedding, my company offered me a temporary assignment in our Boston office. 3 months to help launch a new campaign for a major client. It was a career-making opportunity, with the promise of a significant promotion if things went well. I discussed it with Ryan and Melissa, who had been living in the house with me. "You absolutely have to take it," Melissa insisted, her blue eyes wide with excitement. "We'll take care of everything here." Ryan nodded in agreement. "Yeah, sis, don't worry about anything. The house will be exactly as you left it." I believed them. That was my first mistake. I transferred 3 months of mortgage payments in advance, packed 4 suitcases of essentials, and flew to Boston on a crisp March morning. The project was all-consuming: 14-hour days, weekend strategy sessions, midnight client calls. I barely had time to check in with Ryan and Melissa beyond quick texts and occasional FaceTime calls that always seemed to happen in their car or at a cafe, never at home. When June arrived, I was exhausted but triumphant. The campaign had exceeded expectations, and my boss had already hinted at a substantial raise and a director-level position. I flew back to Chicago on a Friday evening, took an Uber from O'Hare, and arrived home just after sunset, eager to sleep in my own bed after months of hotel living. The front yard looked different, new landscaping with stones and drought-resistant. Plants had replaced our mother's beloved flower garden. Not my taste, but I was too tired to care. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The living room had been repainted from my carefully chosen sage green to a stark white, and the comfortable sectional sofa had been replaced with 2 minimalist leather chairs and a glass coffee table. My collection of vintage travel posters, gone. Instead, a massive television dominated the wall, flanked by professional photos of Ryan and Melissa in various athletic poses. "Hello?" I called out, setting down my suitcase. "I'm home." Ryan appeared from the kitchen, a protein shake in hand, and surprise on his face. "Annabelle, we weren't expecting you until tomorrow." "I finished early and caught an earlier flight," I said, still taking in the transformed space. "Where's all my stuff?" "Oh, we put some things in storage," he said vaguely. Melissa thought the place needed a refresh. "Do you like it?" Before I could answer, Melissa bounded down the stairs in workout clothes. "Annabelle, welcome back." She hugged me briefly. "How was Boston? You look tired. Have you lost weight?" "I'm fine, just jet-lagged," I replied. "The house looks different." Melissa beamed. "Wait until you see the rest. We've been working so hard while you were gone. Come on, I'll give you the tour." As she led me through the house, each room revealed more changes. The dining room where our family had shared countless meals was now a nutrition station, with meal prep containers, a commercial-grade blender, and protein powder canisters organized by color. The small home office had become a recovery room with massage tables and foam rollers, but nothing prepared me for what they'd done to my bedroom. "And here's the pièce de résistance," Melissa announced, flinging open the door to what had been my private sanctuary for the past 7 years, where my queen-sized bed, antique dresser, and reading nook had once stood. There was now a complete home gym. Rubber flooring covered the hardwood I'd refinished myself. A weight rack lined one wall, a Peloton bike and treadmill occupied the bay window, and a large mirror covered the wall where my bookshelf had been. Not a single trace of my existence remained. "Where's my bed?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Where are my books? My clothes?" Ryan cleared his throat. "We set up the pull-out couch in the basement for you. Most of your clothes are in boxes down there. The books, well, we didn't have room for all of them, but we kept the ones that seemed important." "Important? Who are you to decide what's important to me?" My shock was turning to anger. "Where's my grandmother's quilt? My journals? The photo albums?" Melissa's smile faltered. "We had to make executive decisions, Annabelle. This house was seriously underutilized space-wise. Ryan and I are building a business, and we needed a home base for our clients." "Clients? You're bringing clients here? This is a residential neighborhood. Ryan?" Put his arm around Melissa. "It's just a few private training sessions. The neighbors don't mind. And honestly, Annabelle, you're hardly ever here anyway. You work all the time." I stared at them, speechless. The betrayal cut deep. This wasn't just about furniture or decor. They had erased me from my own home while I was away working to pay for it. "I think I need some air," I managed to say, turning away to hide the tears welling in my eyes. I walked out the front door and sat on the porch steps, my head spinning. As the initial shock subsided, something shifted inside me. I'd always been the responsible one, the planner, the rule follower. But what had it gotten me? A basement sofa and boxes of discarded belongings. My phone buzzed with a text from my boss. "Fantastic news. Board approved your promotion. Director title official on Monday. Celebration dinner next week." I looked back at the house, my house. Technically half mine according to the deed. But in reality, it had become Ryan and Melissa's fitness empire outpost. 3 months of hard work in Boston had secured my professional future, but I'd lost my personal space in the process. That's when an idea began to form. I'd been handling our parents' mortgage diligently for years, building equity in a property that was now being used against my wishes. The promotion meant a substantial salary increase. What if, instead of fighting for my bedroom back, I used this situation as motivation to create something better for myself? I opened my banking app and checked my savings, the amount I'd set, aside for eventually buying my own place someday. With my new salary and a bit of financial maneuvering, I might be able to accelerate that timeline. Boston had impressed me during my stay, and our client had mentioned expanding their contract, potentially requiring more on-site work from our agency. As twilight settled over the neighborhood, a strange calm replaced my anger. Ryan and Melissa had taken my bedroom, but perhaps they'd inadvertently pushed me towards something I'd been too comfortable to pursue. True independence. I walked back into the house with a new purpose. Melissa was doing yoga in the living room while Ryan prepared protein-packed meals for the week ahead. Neither seemed particularly concerned about where I would sleep tonight. "I think I'll get a hotel room for a few days," I announced, grabbing my suitcase. "Give myself time to adjust to the new arrangements." "Don't be silly," Melissa said, transitioning into a downward dog. "The basement is totally cozy." I forced a smile. "I'm sure it is, but I need space to think. I'll be back on Monday to discuss some changes of my own." As I closed the front door behind me, I felt lighter somehow. They had transformed my bedroom without my permission, but they had no idea that in doing so, they'd set in motion a transformation far more significant, one that would ultimately reshape all our lives. What they didn't know as I drove away was that I already had my lawyer's number pulled up on my phone. By Monday morning, I would have a clear understanding of my options regarding our shared property. And by the end of summer, if things went according to the plan now forming in my mind, their home gym might become part of my investment portfolio. The Marriott downtown became my sanctuary that weekend. I spent Saturday morning making calls, first to my lawyer, Jackson Winters, then to a real estate appraiser, and finally to my financial advisor. By evening, I had a clearer picture of my options and the beginnings of a strategy that felt both liberating and slightly terrifying. Sunday morning, I met with Tanya Rodriguez, a real estate agent specializing in investment properties. We sat at a cafe near the hotel, laptops open and coffee cooling as we talked through scenarios. Based on current market values in your neighborhood, your half of the property is worth approximately $175,000, Tanya explained, showing me comparable sales in the area. You have several options here. You could force a sale and split the proceeds, buy out your brother's share, or, and this is where it gets interesting, leverage your equity for something bigger. I'm listening, I said, intrigued by the glint in her eye. There's a duplex in Lakeview that just hit the market. Needs work, but the location is prime. If you use your equity as a down payment and qualify for a mortgage based on your new salary, you could potentially own both units, live in one, rent the other. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. The idea was appealing, but something didn't feel quite right. I thanked Tanya for her insights and promised to consider the duplex option. But as I walked back to the hotel, another plan began crystallizing in my mind. Monday morning arrived with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. I showered, dressed in my most confident outfit, a charcoal pantsuit with red heels, and headed back to what used to be my home. I found Ryan and Melissa in the kitchen, both scrolling through their phones while sipping green smoothies. Melissa wore branded athleisure wear with Melfit emblazoned across the chest. Apparently, her personal training business now had merch. "Annabelle!" Ryan looked up, surprised. "We thought maybe you'd decided to stay at the hotel longer?" "We need to talk," I said, setting my briefcase on the counter. "All three of us." Melissa glanced at her watch. "I have a client in 30 minutes. Can we make this quick?" "This won't take long," I assured her, removing 3 folders from my briefcase. "I've spent the weekend evaluating our situation, and I've come to a decision about the house." Ryan's expression shifted from confused to concerned. "What situation? What decision?" I slid a folder toward each of them. After finding my bedroom converted into a gym without my knowledge or consent, while I was working to pay the mortgage, I might add, I realized that our current living arrangement no longer works for me. Melissa rolled her eyes. "Are you still upset about that? It's just a room, Annabelle. You can have it back if it's that important." "It's not about the room anymore," I replied calmly. "It's about respect and boundaries. These folders contain 3 options for moving forward. I suggest you review them carefully." Ryan opened his folder warily. "What is this? A buyout offer?" Option 1. I buy your half of the house at fair market value. You and Melissa find somewhere else to live within 60 days. "That's ridiculous," Melissa exclaimed. "We've made this place our home. We've invested in improvements. Converting my bedroom into a gym without permission isn't an improvement. It's an overstep," I countered. "But if you feel strongly about staying, there's option 2. You buy my half at market. Value plus 15% compensation for the unauthorized modifications." Ryan flipped through the papers, his face paling. "We can't afford this. You know we can't." "There's always option 3, I said, pointing to the final page in their folders. I've been offered a permanent position in Boston. If you agree to pay fair market rent, $2,400 monthly, I'll transfer my share of ownership to a property management company. You'll effectively become my tenants." Melissa laughed incredulously. "You want us to pay rent to live in a house that's half Ryan's? That's insane." "What's insane is coming home to find my personal space commandeered and my belongings in boxes," I replied, maintaining my composure. "Ryan owns half the house, yes, but he hasn't contributed to the mortgage in over a year. I have records of every payment." A tense silence filled the kitchen. Ryan stared at the documents, while Melissa's expression cycled through disbelief, anger, and calculation. "We need time to think about this," Ryan finally said. "Of course. You have until Friday to decide." I gathered my briefcase and headed for the door. "Oh, and I'll be staying at the Marriott until then. Send me the bill for my half of any utilities." As I walked to my car, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. For years, I'd carried the financial burden of the house while allowing Ryan the freedom to pursue his interests. I'd been enabling his lack of responsibility, and in doing so, I'd stunted both our growth. 3 days later, my phone rang while I was finishing a video conference with my Boston team. Ryan's name flashed on the screen. "We want to meet," he said. When I answered, "Tonight, if possible." I agreed to dinner at a neutral location, a steakhouse downtown where the ambient noise would discourage raised voices. When I arrived, Ryan and Melissa were already seated, both looking unusually formal and uncomfortable. "Thanks for coming," Ryan said after we'd ordered. "We've been talking about your proposals," Melissa nodded stiffly, "and consulting with friends who know about real estate." "And?" I prompted, taking a sip of water. "None of your options work for us," Ryan stated, "but we have a counter-proposal." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite myself. "I'm listening." Melissa leaned forward. "We've been building our client base for MelFit steadily over the past 6 months. The home gym has been crucial. It allows us to offer private training in a comfortable setting without the overhead of commercial space. Our clients love it," Ryan added. "We've got 15 regulars now, all paying premium rates for the personalized experience." "That's great for your business," I acknowledged, "but it doesn't address the issue of consent or compensation for using the property this way." "That's where our proposal comes in," Melissa continued. "We want to formally convert the house into a fitness studio. We'd take over the mortgage payments entirely, plus pay you a partnership fee for the first 2 years while we establish ourselves." I blinked, genuinely surprised by their entrepreneurial thinking. "You want to turn our parents' house into a commercial property? Are you aware of the zoning issues, the permits required, the insurance implications?" Ryan nodded eagerly. "We've researched everything. The neighborhood is being rezoned next month to allow mixed-use properties. We've already spoken to a business loan officer at the bank." For a moment, I considered their proposal. It showed initiative I hadn't seen from Ryan before. But then I remembered the basement sofa, my grandmother's missing quilt, the decisions made without my input. "I appreciate your creativity," I said, carefully. "But I'm not interested in a business partnership at this time. My 3 options stand." Melissa's face hardened. "Then we choose none of them. You can't force us out. Ryan is co-owner. We'll get our own lawyer." I smiled slightly. "You're welcome to consult legal counsel. In fact, I encourage it. They'll explain that as co-owners who can't agree, our only recourse is a partition action. The court will force a sale of the property and divide the proceeds. Given the unauthorized commercial use and failure to contribute to the mortgage, Ryan's share would likely be reduced significantly." Ryan paled. "You wouldn't do that. It was our parents' house." The waiter arrived with our entrees, creating a momentary pause in the conversation. When he left, I set my napkin on my lap and looked my brother in the eye. I've spent years honoring our parents by being responsible with their legacy. You've treated it as a free place to live, and now, without discussion, a business location. I'm not the one disrespecting their memory. The remainder of dinner passed in uncomfortable conversation about safer topics: mutual friends, Chicago weather, my project in Boston. As we waited for the check, I decided to offer one final olive branch. Look, I don't want a legal battle any more than you do. Here's a fourth option. I'll give you 3 months to secure financing to buy my share at fair market value. During that time, you'll pay rent to cover the mortgage plus a premium for commercial use. If you can't get financing by then, we proceed with the partition action. Ryan and Melissa exchanged glances, having one of those silent conversations couples develop. Fine, Ryan finally said. 3 months. Send us the paperwork. The next day, my lawyer drafted a formal agreement outlining the terms. Ryan and Melissa signed reluctantly, and I returned to Boston to finalize my promotion and begin house hunting. Those 3 months transformed all our lives in ways none of us anticipated. True to their word, Ryan and Melissa paid the agreed rent on time each month. I used the income to secure a modest condo in Boston's South End. Nothing fancy, but mine alone. My promotion came with stock options that began to appreciate almost immediately as our company landed 2 major new clients. Meanwhile, in Chicago, Ryan and Melissa threw themselves into legitimizing their fitness business. They obtained proper permits, created a professional website, and expanded their client base through social media marketing campaigns featuring their home gym transformation. Their Instagram account gained traction, attracting attention from fitness enthusiasts across the Midwest. 6 weeks before our deadline, I received an unexpected email from Ryan with the subject line, Partnership Proposal V2.0. Inside was a professionally prepared business plan for Thompson Fit Studios, complete with financial projections, marketing, strategies, and expansion plans for franchising home-based personal training spaces. The numbers were impressive. They'd somehow secured provisional backing from a venture capital firm specializing in fitness industry startups. The final slide contained their offer. They would purchase my half of the house at the agreed price, plus grant me a 10% equity stake in Thompson Fit Enterprises. I consulted my financial advisor, who reviewed their business plan with appropriate skepticism but ultimately concluded it had merit. High risk, but potentially high reward, she advised. Their concept of premium home-based training environments addresses a real market gap. If they can execute their franchise model, that 10% could be worth something someday. After careful consideration, I suggested a counter-proposal. I would accept a 15% equity stake with specific governance provisions that would prevent them from making major business decisions without consulting all shareholders. To my surprise, they agreed with minimal negotiation. As the 3-month deadline approached, I flew back to Chicago for the closing. The house, now officially rezoned as a mixed-use property, had been completely transformed. The living room served as a reception area with sleek furniture and inspirational wall graphics. The kitchen had become a nutrition consultation space. My former bedroom, the original home gym that sparked everything, was now the centerpiece of their marketing materials, the Thompson Fit Signature Training Experience. Ryan greeted me at the door with an unexpected hug. "We couldn't have done this without you pushing us," he admitted as he gave me the tour. Turns out, I needed the kick in the pants. Melissa was more reserved but professional as we signed the final paperwork transferring my ownership stake in the property while establishing my minority interest in their company. "Your equity agreement includes quarterly financial reports," she explained, handing me a branded folder. "First franchise location opens next month in Evanston." As I prepared to return to Boston the next day, I took one final walk through the house. Nothing remained of the home I'd grown up in, no trace of our parents' furniture or the life we'd shared there. Yet somehow, it felt right. The house had served its purpose for our family, and now it was serving a new one. Ryan drove me to the airport, an almost companionable silence between us for most of the journey. As we approached the departures terminal, he finally spoke. "I'm sorry about your bedroom," he said quietly. "We should have asked. We should have respected your space." "You're right," I replied, gathering my bags. "But if you had, none of this would have happened. Sometimes the worst decisions lead to the best outcomes." 6 months later, I received my first dividend check from Thompson Fit Enterprises. Modest, but symbolic. A year after that, their third franchise location opened, and the check was substantially larger. The company was featured in Entrepreneur magazine's Fitness Startups to Watch, with Ryan and Melissa posing proudly in front of my former bedroom's weight rack. I used the proceeds to make a down payment on my second investment property, a small apartment building near my Boston condo. As I signed the closing documents, I couldn't help but smile at the irony. My brother and his wife had taken my personal space without permission, and in return, I'd gained not just financial leverage, but a wholly unexpected business opportunity. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting ahead. 2 years after that fateful homecoming, my life had transformed in ways I never could have anticipated. My Boston condo had become a comfortable home base, decorated entirely to my taste with no compromises necessary. The small apartment building I'd purchased was now fully occupied with reliable tenants, generating steady monthly income. My investment portfolio had diversified beyond real estate to include tech startups and sustainable energy ventures. Most surprisingly, Thompson Fit Enterprises had evolved from a questionable home-based business into a legitimate fitness empire with 12 franchise locations across 3 states. The quarterly reports showed impressive growth, and my 15% stake had appreciated well beyond my initial expectations. On a brisk October morning, I received an unexpected call from Ryan. We maintained civil relations through business channels, but personal calls were rare. "Annabelle, how are you?" His voice carried an unfamiliar warmth. "Got plans for Thanksgiving?" I hesitated, caught off guard by the question. "Nothing concrete. Why?" "Melissa and I are hosting at our new place. We'd love for you to come." Their new place was a sprawling Victorian in Chicago's Lincoln Park neighborhood, purchased 6 months earlier when they decided to separate their residence from their flagship fitness studio. I'd seen photos but hadn't visited. "I'll think about it," I replied non-committally. "How's business?" "Actually, that's part of why I'm calling. We've received an acquisition offer from FitLife International. They want to buy Thompson Fit, including our proprietary home gym conversion system and franchise model." My interest piqued immediately. "What are the terms?" $30 million for the entire operation, with performance-based escalators that could push it to 50 over 5 years. They'd keep me and Melissa on as brand ambassadors and product development consultants. I nearly dropped my phone. $30 million? You're not serious." "Dead serious." "The paperwork arrived yesterday. As a minority shareholder, you'd clear about $4.5 million, more if the performance metrics hit." The figures danced through my mind, far beyond anything I'd anticipated when I'd reluctantly accepted equity in lieu of immediate cash. What had begun as an act of revenge had morphed into something profoundly more valuable. "We need your vote to proceed," Ryan continued. "The shareholders' meeting is next Friday in Chicago. Any chance you could attend in person? This feels like something we should discuss face to face." I checked my calendar, a presentation to the executive board on Thursday, but nothing that couldn't be rescheduled. "I'll be there." The following Friday found me in a glass-walled conference room on the 30th floor of a Michigan Avenue high-rise, seated across from Ryan and Melissa. Their lawyer, Patrick Donovan, a silver-haired man with shrewd eyes, presented the acquisition. Documents with meticulous detail. FitLife's representatives, a team of 4 immaculately dressed executives, nodded along as he outlined the terms. "In summary," Patrick concluded, "this represents a landmark valuation for a fitness company of your size and age. FitLife's distribution channels would instantly scale your model nationwide, potentially internationally. The retention of the Thompson name and your ongoing roles as brand ambassadors protect the company's authentic origin story, the origin story. I nearly laughed at the diplomatic phrasing. That authentic story began with my bedroom being commandeered without permission, a detail conveniently omitted from their polished marketing materials. Ms. Thompson, FitLife's CEO, David Mercer, addressed me directly. You've been quiet. As a significant shareholder, your perspective is valuable to us. All eyes turned to me. I took a measured sip of water, organizing my thoughts. The offer is generous, I acknowledged. But I have concerns about the acceleration clause on page 47. The performance metrics seem aggressive for year 3, particularly the international expansion targets. David nodded appreciatively. A fair observation. We're confident in our ability to scale rapidly, but we could adjust the timeline for the Asia-Pacific region. The negotiation continued for another hour, with small adjustments made to various terms. Throughout the discussion, I noticed something unexpected. Ryan consistently deferred to my financial insights while Melissa took notes on my suggested modifications. The power dynamic had shifted subtly but unmistakably. When we broke for lunch, Ryan pulled me aside. I didn't know you were so versed in acquisition language. You've spotted things even Patrick missed. I shrugged. I've been involved in 3 corporate acquisitions at my firm. You pick things up. Well, it's impressive. He hesitated, then added, You know, we never properly thanked you. For what? Threatening legal action when you took over my bedroom? He winced but persisted. For inadvertently pushing us to legitimize the business. If you hadn't forced us to get serious about permits and financing, we'd probably still be training clients illegally in that converted bedroom, scraping by on cash payments. The admission surprised me. You're thanking me for being angry? I'm thanking you for being strategic instead of just emotional. You could have just yelled and made demands, but instead, you presented business-minded options. It made us think like business owners, too. When the meeting reconvened, the negotiation continued with renewed energy. By late afternoon, we had reached an agreement, $32 million upfront, with realistic performance escalators potentially adding another 15 over 4 years. My share would amount to just over $5 million immediately, with the possibility of more to come. As we signed the preliminary agreement, I felt a strange sense of closure. The house that had been the source of so much tension was now merely the origin point of a valuable business asset, one that would set all 3 of us up for financial security, well beyond what our parents could have imagined when they left us their modest property. After the FitLife executives departed, Melissa suggested celebratory drinks at the Peninsula Hotel bar. I agreed, curious about this new collegial dynamic. As we settled into plush chairs with champagne flutes, she studied me with newfound respect. You know, I used to think you were uptight, she admitted. Always worrying about mortgage payments and proper permits. And I thought you were irresponsible, I countered, treating a shared home like your personal fitness playground. Ryan looked between us, tension visible in his shoulders. Melissa laughed unexpectedly. Fair enough. I was pretty entitled about that gym conversion. In my defense, we had no idea how successful it would become. That's just it, I replied, warming to the conversation. Success doesn't justify poor behavior. It just rewards it sometimes. You got lucky that your inconsiderate actions happened to lead to a profitable business model. Instead of taking offense, Melissa nodded thoughtfully. You're right. And if we hadn't had your business acumen pushing us toward legitimacy, we'd probably be facing fines and shutdown notices by now instead of a multi-million-dollar acquisition. The acknowledgement was surprisingly satisfying, more gratifying than the impending financial windfall in some ways. So, what's next for you? Ryan asked, changing the subject. With your share of the sale, I mean. I swirled my champagne, considering the question. I've been researching property development opportunities in emerging Boston neighborhoods. There's a warehouse conversion project that looks promising, mixed-use residential and commercial space. Going all in on real estate? Melissa asked. It's become something of a passion, I admitted. There's something satisfying about transforming spaces, seeing the potential in properties others have overlooked. Ryan raised his glass. To transformations, then, of bedrooms, businesses, and relationships. We clinked glasses, the gesture symbolizing a truce I hadn't realized I needed. The acquisition closed 3 months later, the funds transferring on a mundane Tuesday morning. I stared at my bank balance for several minutes, the figure so far removed from reality that it failed to register emotionally. Later that week, I signed the paperwork for my warehouse conversion project in Boston's Dorchester neighborhood. The former textile factory would become 32 loft apartments above street-level retail spaces, with 1 penthouse unit reserved for my personal use. The symmetry wasn't lost on me. 32 units, $32 million from the FitLife deal, as if the universe were acknowledging the connection between these chapters of my life. That spring, I finally accepted Ryan and Melissa's standing invitation to visit. Their Lincoln Park Victorian was tastefully appointed, with only 1 room dedicated to fitness equipment, a reasonable home gym in what would traditionally be a study. The rest of the space functioned as a normal family home, with comfortable furniture and personal touches. We've learned some balance, Ryan explained as he gave me the tour. The flagship studio handles all client training now. This is just for us. Melissa had prepared dinner, not protein-packed meal prep containers, but a proper 3-course meal served on their wedding china. As we dined, the conversation flowed more naturally than it had in years, reminiscing about childhood memories and sharing current projects. After dessert, Ryan disappeared briefly, returning with a carefully wrapped package. We found this in storage recently. Thought you might want it back. Inside was our grandmother's quilt, the one I'd feared lost during the bedroom conversion. I ran my fingers over the familiar patterns, emotion tightening my throat. You kept it. Melissa nodded. We were careless with your things, but not malicious. Most of what wasn't in the basement got boxed up in the attic. We've been sorting through it all since the move. The gesture, small in comparison to our business dealings, yet significant in its personal meaning, bridged a gap I'd assumed would remain forever. 6 months later, I stood in the newly completed penthouse of my Dorchester development project, surveying the Boston skyline from floor-to-ceiling windows. The space reflected everything I'd learned about myself in the years since coming home to find my bedroom transformed. My appreciation for clean lines and functional design, my desire for both openness and privacy, my need for a space entirely my own. My phone chimed with a notification. The final performance metrics from FitLife had been calculated. The international expansion had exceeded projections, triggering the maximum payout under our agreement. My additional share amounted to just over $3 million. As I processed the news, my real estate agent called about another potential investment, a struggling boutique hotel in Providence with tremendous upside potential. I agreed to review the prospectus, already imagining how the property might be repositioned for the modern traveler. That evening, I hosted a small housewarming gathering in my penthouse. Among the guests were former colleagues, new business partners, and, somewhat surprisingly, Ryan and Melissa, who had flown in specifically for the occasion. They arrived with a housewarming gift, a framed before and after photo set of the original house, showing its transformation from family home to fitness studio. We thought you might appreciate the visual representation of where it all began, Ryan explained as I unwrapped it. The gesture could have been interpreted as tactless, a reminder of their invasion of my space. Instead, I found myself appreciating the perfect symbolism, the tangible evidence of how an act of inconsideration had cascaded into opportunity, growth, and ultimately reconciliation. I hung the photos in my home office, a daily reminder that sometimes the greatest catalysts for positive change arrive disguised as violations of boundaries. What had begun as a petty revenge fantasy, making their home my investment property, had evolved into something far more valuable. The discovery of my own capacity for strategic thinking, risk-taking, and entrepreneurship. As my guests mingled, in the open-concept living area, I stepped out onto the terrace for a moment alone. The city lights sparkled below, each representing a home, a business, a life in progress. Somewhere in that tapestry were other stories like mine, moments of conflict that could either descend into bitter feuds or rise toward unexpected collaboration. Ryan joined me on the terrace, handing me a glass of wine. "Penny for your thoughts?" I accepted the glass with a small smile. "Just reflecting on unintended consequences. If you hadn't converted my bedroom without asking, none of this would exist." He studied the skyline thoughtfully. "And if you hadn't reacted with business savvy instead of just anger, Thompson Fit would never have happened either." We stood in companionable silence, the past finally settling into its proper perspective, not as a source of lingering resentment, but as the unlikely foundation of our respective successes. "To bedrooms and boardrooms," I offered, raising my glass. "And everything in between," he replied, completing the toast. The boundary violation that had once felt like the ultimate betrayal had become, in retrospect, the first domino in a sequence that transformed not just our financial circumstances, but our relationship itself. They had made my bedroom into a home gym, and I had made their home into my investment property. But in the process, we had all discovered better versions of ourselves than we could have imagined. 5 years after the FitLife acquisition, my investment portfolio had expanded beyond anything I could have imagined when I first walked into that converted bedroom. The Dorchester warehouse project had tripled in value. The Providence Hotel had become a destination for tech industry retreats, and I'd acquired 3 additional properties across New England. My name had begun appearing in regional business publications. Annabelle Thompson, the accidental real estate mogul, read one particularly flattering profile in Boston Business Journal. What the articles missed was the web of relationships that had evolved alongside the investments. Ryan and Melissa remained in Chicago, where they had launched a new venture, a certification program for fitness entrepreneurs looking to replicate their home-to-business conversion model. They paid me a consulting fee for occasional strategic advice, a formalization of the business dynamic that had emerged during the FitLife negotiations. On a crisp autumn morning, as I reviewed plans for my newest acquisition, a former church, building in Salem with potential as a boutique event venue, my assistant interrupted with an urgent call from Ryan. "Annabelle," he began without preamble, "how quickly can you get to Chicago?" The tension in his voice alarmed me. "What's happened? Is Melissa okay?" "She's fine. We're fine. He hesitated. "It's the original house. There was a fire last night." My mind raced to the property that had started everything. Our parents' modest home, now the flagship Thompson Fit location, still owned by our investment entity but operated by FitLife under the acquisition agreement. How bad? Structural damage to about 30% of the building. Nobody was hurt, thankfully. It happened after hours. Insurance? Coverage is adequate, but that's not why I'm calling. Another pause. FitLife is using this as an opportunity to relocate the flagship studio to a higher traffic area. They're offering to sell the damaged property back to our holding company at a nominal price, essentially removing it from the acquisition assets. I understood immediately. The executives at FitLife saw the fire as convenient timing. Why rebuild in a residential neighborhood when they could establish a showcase facility in a commercial district? For them, it was simple business logic. "What are you thinking?" I asked, already clearing my schedule. "I'm thinking we need to decide what happens to our parents' house. Together. The property has appreciated significantly since rezoning, even with the damage." 3 hours later, I was on a flight to Chicago. Ryan picked me up at O'Hare, his usual energetic demeanor subdued. We drove directly to the property, where yellow caution tape surrounded the perimeter. The front portion, once our living room, then the reception area, remained largely intact, but the rear section where my bedroom had been was visibly damaged, the roof partially collapsed. Fire inspector says it started in the electrical system, Ryan explained as we surveyed the scene from the sidewalk. Old wiring that should have been completely replaced during renovation. I felt a pang of responsibility. Our hasty agreement with FitLife had included maintenance provisions that clearly hadn't been properly enforced. What are our options? FitLife's offer expires in 10 days. If we buy it back, we could rebuild, either as another fitness space or convert it to something else. If we decline, they'll sell it to developers. The lot alone is worth 3 times what our parents paid for the house. We spent the afternoon with contractors, insurance adjusters, and the local building inspector. The damage assessment was thorough, but ultimately encouraging. The foundation remained sound, and much of the original structure could be preserved with proper reinforcement. Over dinner at a nearby steakhouse, Ryan spread architectural drawings across the table, contingency plans he'd apparently been developing since the fire. 2 options, he explained, pointing to different renderings. First, we rebuild as premium short-term executive housing. The neighborhood demographics have shifted toward young professionals needing temporary accommodations during corporate assignments. The irony wasn't lost on me. My own Boston opportunity had begun with precisely such a housing need. And the second option? He flipped to another set of drawings. We converted into a resource center for new entrepreneurs, Thompson Fit alumni, looking to launch their own ventures, shared workspace, meeting rooms, mentorship programs, a business incubator of sorts. I studied both concepts, impressed by the detailed planning. You've given this serious thought. I have, he admitted. To be honest, I've been considering the incubator idea for months. The fire just accelerated the timeline. Melissa joined us for dessert, having finished teaching an advanced certification course. She brought additional financial projections for both proposals, her business acumen evident in the comprehensive analysis. The executive housing would generate higher, immediate returns, she noted, but the incubator creates longer-term relationship value, plus potential equity positions in promising startups. I considered both options, weighing the financial merits against less tangible factors. This property held our family history, not just in the literal sense of our childhood home, but as the genesis of our unexpected business journey. What if we combined elements of both? I suggested. The main level becomes the incubator space, while the upper floor offers 2 executive apartments for visiting mentors or entrepreneurs needing short-term accommodations. Ryan's eyes lit up. Hybrid model. I like it. Self-sustaining from the rental income, with the incubator as our legacy project. We spent the next day refining the concept with architects and permit specialists. The hybrid model evolved into a comprehensive plan. Thompson Innovation House would feature flexible workspace, accommodation for visiting entrepreneurs, and dedicated mentorship programming. Our parents' names would adorn the community conference room, a subtle tribute to their indirect role in our business evolution. As we finalized the budget over lunch, Ryan broached a subject I hadn't anticipated. We'd like you to be more than just a financial partner in this, he said, exchanging glances with Melissa. The entrepreneurs we work with could benefit tremendously from your expertise in property development and investment strategy. You want me to mentor fitness instructors? I asked skeptically. Melissa shook her head. Not just fitness folks. Our alumni are branching into all sorts of adjacent industries: equipment manufacturing, apparel design, nutrition services, wellness technology. What they lack is precisely what you've mastered, turning specialized knowledge into diversified investment opportunities. The offer was flattering but unexpected. I'm based in Boston. My development projects require hands-on management. We're not asking you to relocate, Ryan clarified. quarterly visits, some virtual sessions, maybe an annual workshop on investment strategy. I mulled the proposition as we toured the property again, this time with the architect and contractor. Standing in what remained of my former bedroom, the space that had sparked everything, I felt an unexpected sense of opportunity rather than lingering resentment. "I'll consider it," I told them before departing for the airport. "Send me the revised business plan and proposed operating agreement." Back in Boston, I consulted with my financial advisors about the Chicago proposal. The numbers were sound but not exceptional, certainly not the highest and best use of capital from a purely financial perspective. Yet something about the project resonated on a different level. 2 weeks later, I called Ryan with my decision. "I'm in, with one condition." "Name it," he replied, enthusiasm evident in his voice. "I want the primary focus to be on female entrepreneurs. Not exclusively, but predominantly. Any particular reason?" I thought about my own journey, how discovering my capacity for strategic investment had transformed not just my financial situation, but my sense of identity and purpose. "Let's just say I've observed a gap in the market," I replied diplomatically. "Women often lack access to the kind of direct mentorship and capital connections that accelerate business growth." Ryan agreed readily, and the project moved forward with remarkable speed. 6 months later, Thompson Innovation House opened its doors with a ribbon-cutting ceremony attended by local business leaders and alumni of the Thompson Fit certification program. The rehabilitation had preserved the exterior character of our parents' home while completely reimagining the interior as a modern collaborative environment. My former bedroom, the space that had once been commandeered as a home gym, now housed the Catalyst Lounge, a bright, airy meeting area where entrepreneurs could connect with potential investors and strategic partners. A small plaque near the entrance read simply, "Sometimes the best transformations begin with disruption." To my surprise, I found myself visiting Chicago monthly rather than quarterly, increasingly drawn to the energy of the emerging entrepreneurs. One participant, Denise Winters, had developed an innovative adaptive fitness program for seniors. Another, Marcus Chen, was pioneering virtual reality fitness experiences. Providing them with strategic guidance on scaling their businesses and securing appropriate funding became unexpectedly fulfilling. During one such visit, I arrived to find a construction crew installing new signage above the main entrance. The updated logo incorporated elements of both Thompson Fit and my own real estate development brand. "We took the liberty," Melissa explained when I questioned the change. "Your involvement has evolved beyond financial partnership. The entrepreneurs see you as a founding mentor, not just Ryan's sister with deep pockets." The acknowledgement triggered a reflection on how far we'd all come from that tense homecoming 5 years earlier. My anger over the converted bedroom had catalyzed a sequence of events that transformed all our lives, pushing Ryan and Melissa toward legitimate business practices, launching my own investment career, and eventually creating this collaborative space for nurturing new entrepreneurs. That evening, as we shared dinner in one of the executive apartments, Ryan raised his glass in a toast to unexpected partnerships and unintended consequences, I added, clinking glasses. Melissa completed the sentiment and the bedrooms that become boardrooms. We laughed at the inside joke, the shared history now a source of amusement rather than tension. The following quarter, I introduced Thompson Innovation House participants to my Boston development network, arranging investment meetings for the most promising ventures. 2 secured significant funding, with one, Denise's adaptive fitness platform, attracting attention from a major healthcare provider looking to incorporate wellness programming into their senior services. As Denise signed her first major contract, she pulled me aside. "You know what made the difference? Your advice about presenting this as a real estate play rather than just a fitness concept. Positioning the in-home equipment as a property value enhancement completely changed the conversation with investors." I smiled, recognizing the evolution of the very insight that had transformed my own approach to the original house dispute. Sometimes the most valuable real estate is conceptual, changing how people perceive the space they already have. By the second anniversary of Thompson Innovation House, the initiative had supported 32 startups, that number appearing once again as a cosmic nod to our journey, with 26 still operating successfully. The executive apartments maintained 85% occupancy, generating sufficient revenue to subsidize the entrepreneurial programming. More significantly, the collaborative model had attracted attention from economic development officials in other cities. A delegation from Detroit visited to explore replicating the concept in revitalizing neighborhoods there. Similar interest came from Cleveland, Milwaukee, and Indianapolis, all Midwest cities with affordable housing stock suitable for creative conversion. During a strategy session to discuss potential expansion, Ryan unveiled a surprising proposal: a Thompson Innovation Network, with converted residential properties in multiple cities serving as nodes for entrepreneurial development. The business model would involve local property partnerships combined with our proven mentorship programming. Essentially, we'd be franchising the concept that began with our parents' house, he explained. Local investors provide and renovate the properties. We provide the operational blueprint and entrepreneurial curriculum. The vision was ambitious but compelling, a scalable approach to urban revitalization centered around entrepreneurship. I found myself mapping potential markets, evaluating property acquisition strategies, and drafting partnership frameworks with an enthusiasm that matched my early real estate ventures. "We've come full circle," Melissa observed as we refined the expansion plan. "From converting a bedroom without permission to creating a business model for transforming entire houses with community buy-in." She was right. The essence of our success had always been about transformation, seeing potential in spaces others overlooked or undervalued. What began as an inconsiderate appropriation of personal space had evolved into a deliberate, collaborative methodology for repurposing properties to nurture new business ventures. Later that week, as I prepared to return to Boston, Ryan presented me with a small wooden box crafted from salvaged floorboards from my original bedroom. "What's this?" I asked, opening it to find a house key inside. "The first key to the first Thompson Innovation House," he explained. "We thought you should have it, since none of this would exist if you hadn't come home to find your bedroom converted into a gym." The gesture captured perfectly the journey we'd taken, from conflict over personal space to collaboration on creating spaces for others to grow. The key represented not ownership in the traditional sense, but access to possibility, to transformation, to the unexpected opportunities that arise when we reimagine the purpose of the spaces we inhabit. As my plane took off from O'Hare that evening, I held the key in my palm, feeling its weight and significance. They had made my bedroom into a home gym, and I had made their home into my investment property. But together, we had ultimately created something far more valuable than either of us had initially envisioned. A model for turning personal spaces into catalysts for community innovation. The boundaries that once divided us had become bridges connecting aspiring entrepreneurs to the resources, mentorship, and environments they needed to thrive. In the alchemy of our shared journey, the lead of resentment had indeed transformed into the gold of opportunity, not just for us, but for everyone touched by the spaces we continued to reimagine together. 10 years after walking into my converted bedroom, I stood at the podium of the National Real Estate Investors Association conference in San Diego, surveying a room of attentive faces. The moderator had just introduced me as the keynote speaker, Annabelle Thompson, founder of Threshold Ventures and pioneer of the adaptive reuse incubator model. "My journey into real estate wasn't planned," I began, deliberately omitting the dramatic bedroom conversion that had catalyzed everything. That story, while perfect for intimate mentoring sessions, felt too personal for this professional forum. It began with a single property dispute that forced me to think differently about space, value, and transformation. For the next 40 minutes, I shared insights from a decade of property development focused on creating entrepreneurial ecosystems within repurposed residential buildings. The Thompson Innovation Network had expanded to 17 cities, each location preserving the character of existing structures while reimagining their interior functionality. The most valuable conversion isn't physical, it's conceptual, I concluded, seeing potential where others see only problems, opportunity where others see only obstacles. That's the essence of successful adaptive reuse. The applause was gratifying, but even more so were the conversations afterward. Developers seeking partnerships, city officials exploring economic revitalization, entrepreneurs looking for space within our growing network. I exchanged contact information with a dozen potential collaborators before finally escaping to the quiet of the hotel bar. I had just ordered a martini when my phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Caught your live stream. Solid insights, though you left out the best part of the origin story. Call when you're free. I smiled, imagining my brother watching from Chicago. Our relationship had evolved into something neither of us could have predicted. A balanced partnership, based on complementary strengths and mutual respect. His fitness expertise and entrepreneurial mentorship, coupled with my investment acumen and property development experience, had created a business model neither of us could have built alone. The following morning, as I prepared for my flight back to Boston, I received an unexpected call from Eleanor Prescott, the city manager of my hometown in western Massachusetts. I hadn't returned there in years, maintaining only distant connections through occasional social media exchanges with former classmates. Ms. Thompson, Eleanor began, her tone professionally warm. I hope I'm not intruding on your conference schedule. Just heading to the airport, actually. What can I do for you? I've been following your work with the Thompson Innovation Network. Our Economic Development Committee is interested in discussing the possibility of establishing a location here. The request caught me off guard. My hometown had been in economic decline for decades, its manufacturing base eroded by globalization, its downtown hollowed out by suburban mall development. I'm not sure it's an ideal market for our model. We typically focus on urban areas with existing entrepreneurial activity. That's precisely why we need you, Eleanor countered. We don't have a natural innovation ecosystem, but we do have affordable real estate and a community college producing graduates who immediately leave for opportunities elsewhere. We need a catalyst. I thought of the old textile mill downtown, a massive brick structure sitting vacant for as long as I could remember. My mother had worked there briefly before meeting my father. The Palmer Mill building is still empty? 10 years now. The remediation was completed, but no developers have shown interest. Too large for retail, too remote for upscale housing. The conversation continued during my ride to the airport, with Eleanor outlining various incentives the town could offer: tax abatements, expedited permitting, potential municipal investment. By the time I boarded my flight, I had agreed to visit the following month to assess the feasibility of what would be our first rural innovation hub. When I mentioned the proposition to Ryan during our video call that evening, his initial reaction was skeptical. Pretty far outside our target demographic, isn't it? We've focused on urban centers with existing creative populations. True, I acknowledged. But there's something appealing about bringing this model back to where we started. Not just where you and I grew up, but where our parents worked before we were born. Melissa joined the call, her strategic mind immediately identifying potential adaptations. We'd need to modify the entrepreneur recruitment strategy, maybe partner with regional colleges, focus on industries relevant to rural economies, sustainable agriculture, renewable energy, remote work enablement. The conversation evolved into a preliminary planning session, with Ryan sketching concepts for the mill's conversion while Melissa researched the region's economic development priorities. By call's end, what had begun as a courtesy consideration had transformed into an intriguing possibility. extending our model beyond urban centers into the rural communities often overlooked by innovation initiatives. 6 weeks later, I found myself standing in the cavernous main floor of the Palmer Mill, dust motes dancing in sunlight streaming through massive windows. The building's bones were sound: solid brick construction, timber framing, high ceilings. Its scale was daunting but also offered unprecedented flexibility. We could maintain the open central area as collaborative workspace, I noted, walking the perimeter with Eleanor and the town's development director. Create private offices and meeting rooms along this wall, maybe a demonstration kitchen for food entrepreneurs in the former loading dock. The upper floors could accommodate residential units, not just executive apartments as in our urban locations, but potentially affordable housing for entrepreneurs relocating to launch their ventures. The basement, with its natural temperature regulation, might serve specialized needs: wine production, mushroom cultivation, cheese aging. As we concluded the tour, Eleanor presented me with a folder containing the town's formal proposal: financial incentives more generous than anticipated, coupled with community commitments to support the initiative through educational partnerships, volunteer mentorship, and local supplier preferences. "There's one other thing you should see," she added, driving me through downtown toward a residential neighborhood I remembered well. We turned onto Maple Street, passing modest homes with well-tended yards, and stopped in front of a 2-story colonial with a recently painted front porch. "Your parents' house," Eleanor explained unnecessarily. "The current owners heard about your potential project and wanted to meet you." I stared at the property where I'd spent my childhood, before the inherited house in Chicago, before the bedroom conversion, before everything that followed. Unlike the Chicago property, this house held only positive memories: holiday gatherings, summer barbecues, quiet evenings with parents who worked hard to provide stability for their children. The owners, a young couple with 2 small children, welcomed me warmly. They'd purchased the property 3 years earlier and had been gradually renovating it while researching its history. "We found these in the attic," the husband explained, presenting a shoebox filled with photographs. "My parents as newlyweds, Ryan and me as toddlers, family vacations to nearby lakes. We thought you might want them." The gesture was unexpectedly moving. I sat on their living room sofa, positioned exactly where ours had been decades earlier, and sifted through fragments of my early life, images captured long before property. Disputes and business ventures had complicated familial relationships. One photograph in particular caught my attention: my father standing proudly in front of the Palmer Mill, wearing a supervisor's badge, my mother beside him in a simple dress, both smiling with the optimism of young adults in a thriving industrial town. "May I keep this one?" I asked. "The others should stay with the house," the couple insisted I take, any that held meaning, but this single image felt sufficient, a visual reminder of the community's industrial heritage and my parents' place within it. I tucked it into my purse, a talisman for the decision I was increasingly inclined to make. Back at my hotel, I drafted a detailed email to Ryan and Melissa outlining my impressions of the mill property and the town's proposal. I attached photos of the building, architectural notes, and preliminary financial projections. Beyond the business case, there's an intangible value here, I concluded. An opportunity to bring our model full circle, from the house dispute that launched our separate paths to a collaborative project in the community where those paths began. I'm inclined to proceed, but this should be a unanimous decision. Their response came jointly the following morning. A comprehensive list of logistical questions paired with enthusiastic conceptual support. "If the numbers work, the symbolism alone makes this worthwhile," Ryan wrote. "Parents worked at the mill, children transform it for the next generation of entrepreneurs. That's a narrative worth building." 3 months later, we announced the Thompson Innovation Network's rural pilot program to a standing room-only crowd in the town hall. Local residents, regional business leaders, and officials from surrounding communities filled every seat with college students peering through the doorways from the corridor beyond. I presented the architectural renderings. The mill reimagined as a dynamic, multi-use facility supporting entrepreneurship across diverse sectors. Ryan outlined the mentorship and business development programming, while Melissa explained the financial structure that would make participation accessible to local entrepreneurs with limited resources. This isn't just about real estate, I emphasized during the Q&A session. It's about creating infrastructure for opportunity, physical, educational, and relational. The building is simply the vessel for the true transformation, which happens in the businesses and lives of the people within it. The project broke ground on a crisp autumn morning, exactly 1 year after my conference keynote. Local contractors handled the exterior restoration, preserving the mill's historic character, while upgrading its environmental systems with state-of-the-art efficiency technologies. For the interior conversion, we engaged graduates of regional, technical programs alongside experienced craftspeople, creating an apprenticeship pipeline that became a model for subsequent projects. As construction progressed, so did entrepreneur recruitment, not through traditional channels, but through community networks, regional colleges, and targeted outreach to former residents who had left seeking opportunity elsewhere. The first cohort included a former farm worker developing solar-powered irrigation systems, a military veteran creating specialized equipment for people with disabilities, and a third-generation dairy farmer transitioning to artisanal cheese production. Ryan relocated temporarily to lead the initial mentorship program, bringing his unique blend of tough love and strategic encouragement to participants unfamiliar with startup methodologies. Melissa developed modified workshops addressing the specific challenges of rural entrepreneurship: limited access to supply chains, smaller local markets, workforce development hurdles. I divided my time between Boston and my hometown, gradually increasing my presence as the opening date approached. During one extended stay, I purchased a small cottage near the town center, not as an investment property, but as a personal retreat. The decision surprised me as much as anyone, yet felt intuitively right. A reconnection to roots I'd nearly forgotten in the pursuit of urban success. The Palmer Mill Innovation Center opened 18 months after the initial proposal, with a weekend celebration blending formal ceremonies and community festivities. The governor cut the ceremonial ribbon alongside the youngest entrepreneur in residence, a 16-year-old developing agricultural drones with guidance from the town's first software engineer, who had returned from Silicon Valley to mentor the next generation. As dusk fell on the final evening of celebrations, I found a quiet moment alone on the mill's rooftop deck, gazing over the town while nursing a glass of locally produced cider. Footsteps behind me announced Ryan's arrival, Melissa following close behind. "Quite a view," he remarked, joining me at the railing. "You can see practically the whole town from here." "Including our old house," I noted, pointing toward a distant neighborhood where porch lights were beginning to illuminate the advancing darkness. "Full circle," Melissa observed, echoing the phrase that had become something of a mantra throughout the project. We stood in companionable silence, watching the community our parents had once called home transform from day to night, old to new, past to future. "Could you have imagined this?" Ryan finally asked. "That day when you came home to find your bedroom converted?" I laughed softly. "Not remotely. I was thinking about revenge, not revitalization." "The best revenge is living well," Melissa quoted, with a smile. "Though in this case, it's helping others live well too." The observation captured precisely what our journey had become: a transmutation of personal grievance into collective opportunity. What began as a violation of personal space had evolved into a mission to create spaces where others could fulfill their potential. As the town's church bells chimed the hour, I raised my glass. "To unexpected journeys. And unintended destinations," Ryan added. Melissa completed the toast. "And the spaces between that make all the difference." Below us, the mill that had once represented industrial decline now hummed with entrepreneurial energy. Woodworkers crafting prototypes in the marker space, culinary innovators testing recipes in the communal kitchen, tech developers collaborating. In the central atrium, the building had been transformed not just physically but functionally, becoming once again a center of productive activity for a community in transition. The following morning, before returning to Boston, I visited my parents' graves in the small cemetery on the edge of town. I placed a single photograph on the simple headstone, not the vintage image from the Palmer Mill's heyday, but a new one capturing its renaissance as an innovation center. "You'd be proud," I said quietly, "not just of what we've built, but of how we built it, together, despite everything." As I drove away, I passed the house that had started it all, our childhood home now nurturing another family's dreams. The property remained simply a residence, its value measured not in financial terms, but in the memories and milestones it contained. That quintessentially American pattern, home to hearth to horizon, private to public, personal to communal, had defined my unexpected journey from bedroom dispute to business empire. They had made my bedroom into a home gym, and I had made their home into my investment property. But collectively, we had transformed that initial conflict into a framework for creating places where innovation and community could thrive together. The bedroom was long gone, the property dispute resolved years ago, but the essential insight remained. The most valuable spaces are those that evolve to meet new needs while honoring their original purpose, providing shelter for dreams, however they might change. 15 years after that fateful homecoming to my gym-converted bedroom, I sat in the office of Senator Eleanor Prescott, formerly our hometown city manager, now representing our state in Washington. The view from her window captured the Capitol Dome, a stark contrast to the Milltown landscapes where our shared work had begun. "The committee is interested in your rural innovation model," Eleanor explained, sliding a folder across her desk. "The Infrastructure Revitalization Bill includes funding for economic development initiatives. Your data from the Palmer Mill and subsequent projects makes a compelling case for replication." I scanned the documents, recognizing the potential for national scale, federal resources to support the transformation of declining industrial properties into entrepreneurial hubs across America's forgotten small towns. "How many communities could this support?" I asked, mentally calculating the implications. "Initial phase targets 50 locations in 15 states. Rust Belt focus first year, expanding to Appalachia and rural South in year 2. Your network would provide the operational blueprint and implementation support." The scope was breathtaking. Far beyond our current 23 locations, each carefully developed through private investment and local partnerships. Federal backing would accelerate expansion while addressing communities most in need of economic revitalization. "I'll need to consult with my partners," I replied, tucking the proposal into my briefcase. "This shifts our model from private enterprise to public infrastructure." Eleanor nodded understanding. "The hearing is scheduled for next month. If you're interested, we'd like you to testify about the measurable impacts across your existing locations." On the flight back to Boston, I reviewed the Palmer Mill's performance metrics. 273 entrepreneurs supported, 128 viable businesses launched, 542 jobs created, $17.2 million in regional economic activity generated. Subsequent locations showed similar patterns of impact, with rural sites often outperforming urban centers in percentage job growth relative to community size. Ryan and Melissa were waiting when I landed, having flown in from Chicago for our quarterly strategy summit. We convened in my downtown office, the entire floor of a converted warehouse now serving as Threshold Ventures' East Coast headquarters. "Federal scale," Ryan mused after I outlined Eleanor's proposal. "That's a fundamental shift in approach." Melissa pulled up a map on the conference room display, highlighting declining industrial towns across the country. "The need is certainly there, but do we have the capacity to implement at this scale? We've always emphasized hands-on involvement in each location. I nodded, appreciating her pragmatism. We'd need a different operational approach. Train the trainer, methodology, standardized implementation playbooks, regional management structure. Our discussion continued over dinner at my Harborview apartment, the conversation evolving from operational concerns to philosophical considerations. Could our intensely personal approach to entrepreneurial development translate to government-funded programming? Would the origin story that informed our methodology, the bedroom conversion that launched everything, retain its inspirational potency when diluted through bureaucratic channels? Maybe this is the wrong question, Ryan suggested as we moved to the balcony with after-dinner drinks. We're asking if our model can adapt to federal requirements. Perhaps we should ask if federal resources can adapt to our model. He elaborated on the concept, using the proposed funding not to replicate our existing approach, but to create an infrastructure enabling locally driven variants tailored to each community's specific needs and assets. The Thompson Innovation. Network becomes a framework rather than a formula, Melissa built on his thinking. Federal resources provide the foundation, but local leadership determines the structure. By midnight, we had sketched the outlines of a modified proposal, a public-private partnership preserving our core methodologies while leveraging government resources to accelerate implementation. I would testify before the committee, highlighting the essential elements that made our approach successful. Preserving architectural character, prioritizing mixed-use functionality, emphasizing community ownership, and maintaining entrepreneurial accessibility. 4 weeks later, I presented our vision to the Senate committee, supported by entrepreneurs from various Thompson Network locations. Lisa Martinez described how the Phoenix Mill conversion had enabled her sustainable farming technology startup to secure manufacturing space she could never have afforded in conventional industrial parks. Marcus Johnson explained how the residency program at our Detroit location had allowed him to relocate from rural Alabama to develop his medical device company with mentorship from experienced healthcare entrepreneurs. Most compelling was Denise Winters, now CEO of AdaptFit Enterprises, whose adaptive fitness technology for seniors had grown from a concept developed at our original Chicago location to a nationwide service with over 200 employees. Her testimony connected our earliest innovation space, my converted bedroom in its third iteration, directly to measurable healthcare outcomes for aging Americans. The committee's questions were incisive but constructive, focusing on scalability, accountability metrics, and integration with existing economic development initiatives. Senator Prescott guided the discussion skillfully, emphasizing the program's potential to address the widening opportunity gap between urban and rural America. 2 months later, the Infrastructure Revitalization Bill passed with bipartisan support, including robust funding for the American Innovation Spaces Initiative, the formalized extension of our model. The press conference announcing the program took place at the Palmer Mill, with Ryan, Melissa, and me flanking the Secretary of Commerce as she outlined implementation plans. This initiative represents a fundamental rethinking of economic development, the Secretary stated. Rather than incentivizing relocations that simply shift opportunity from one region to another, we're investing in infrastructure that nurtures local entrepreneurship and builds on existing community assets. The first phase would support 25 locations, selected through a competitive application process evaluating both need and readiness. Our network would provide technical assistance, mentorship curriculum, and operational guidance, while federal grants would fund physical rehabilitation of selected properties. As journalists asked questions about selection criteria and anticipated outcomes, a local reporter raised his hand. Ms. Thompson, this all began with a personal property dispute, correct? How did that lead to a federal economic development initiative? The question took me back to that moment 15 years earlier, walking into my former bedroom to find weight racks where my reading nook had been, exercise equipment replacing my personal sanctuary, the betrayal I'd felt, the revenge I'd contemplated. the strategic pivot toward investment leverage rather than emotional confrontation. Every transformation begins with disruption, I replied carefully. What matters isn't the initial displacement, but how we respond to it. In our case, a personal space violation became the catalyst for reimagining what spaces can become when purpose aligns with potential. The implementation phase demanded unprecedented coordination among our team. Ryan developed a comprehensive training program for local implementation partners. Melissa created standardized but customizable business development curricula addressing regional economic variations. I focused on establishing governance structures balancing federal oversight with community autonomy. We expanded our core team, recruiting specialists in historic preservation, rural economic development, and public-private partnerships. Our Boston headquarters became the nerve center for a nationwide operation, with satellite offices established in Chicago, Atlanta, and Denver to provide regional support. The first federally funded conversions broke ground 18 months after legislation passed: a former cotton mill in South Carolina, a shuttered automotive plant in Michigan, a decommissioned naval facility in Maine. Each project preserved the distinctive architectural elements of its industrial heritage while adapting interior spaces to contemporary entrepreneurial needs. I attended each groundbreaking, not as a ceremonial figure, but as an active participant in community visioning sessions. The script varied by location, but the essential story remained consistent: spaces designed for yesterday's economy, reimagined for tomorrow's innovators, with careful attention to accessibility, sustainability, and local cultural context. 3. Years into implementation, with 17 federal sites operational and another 30 in development, the White House invited us to present preliminary impact assessments. The data exceeded even our optimistic projections, business formation rates in participant communities increasing 47% above baseline, job creation averaging 1.8 times initial estimates, and perhaps most significantly, a 38% reduction in outmigration among adults aged 25 to 44. You've created geographic opportunity arbitrage, the president's economic advisor noted during our briefing. By making entrepreneurial infrastructure available in lower-cost communities, you're enabling innovation without requiring relocation to establish tech hubs. The observation captured precisely what we'd hoped to achieve: democratizing access to the physical, educational, and social capital necessary for entrepreneurial success. What began as my personal investment strategy had evolved into a framework for community reinvestment on a national scale. As the initiative gained momentum, international delegations began visiting our sites, exploring adaptations for post-industrial regions in Europe, rural communities in Latin America, and manufacturing centers in Asia facing economic transition. The Thompson methodology was documented in academic case studies, featured in economic development textbooks, and analyzed by policy institutes seeking replicable models for community revitalization. 5 years after federal implementation began, on the 20th anniversary of my homecoming to the converted bedroom, we gathered for a private celebration at the Palmer Mill, the prototype that had demonstrated the model's viability in rural contexts. The rooftop garden, where we had once toasted unexpected journeys, now featured mature plantings and comfortable seating areas, with views extending beyond the town to the surrounding countryside. The guest list included key figures from our organizational evolution: early entrepreneurs from the Chicago location, implementation partners from the first federally funded sites, team members who had grown from entry-level positions to leadership roles. Notably absent were media representatives, politicians, or others seeking to affiliate with what had become a recognized brand in economic development circles. This evening was about the personal journey behind the public initiative, the siblings, who had transformed familial conflict into a collaborative mission, the team who had translated that mission into scalable methodology, the entrepreneurs whose success validated our approach. As sunset painted the mill's brick facade with golden light, I clinked a glass to gather attention for a toast. 20 years ago today, I came home from a business trip to find my bedroom, converted into a home gym without my knowledge or consent. Laughter rippled through the gathering, the story now familiar to all present. I was furious, I continued, ready to evict my brother and his wife, to reclaim my space, to right what felt like an egregious wrong. Instead, through a series of decisions none of us could have predicted, that violation of personal boundaries became the catalyst for creating spaces where thousands of entrepreneurs have now built businesses that employ tens of thousands. I raised my glass toward Ryan and Melissa, standing together near the garden's edge. To the gym creators, whose thoughtless act triggered a thought revolution. Ryan stepped forward, raising his own glass. To the property strategist, who saw investment potential where I saw only workout space, Melissa completed the triad. And to the entrepreneurs in every community who transformed our methodology from personal vendetta to public value. As glasses clinked and conversation resumed, I found a quiet moment to reflect on the journey's arc, from violation to vindication, from personal space to public purpose, from singular incident to systemic impact. The bedroom conversion that had once symbolized disrespect for boundaries had become, ironically, the foundation for creating bounded spaces where others could pursue unbounded possibilities. Later that evening, as guests departed, Ryan presented me with a small wrapped package. Found this while cleaning out storage at the original Chicago location. Thought you should have it. Inside was a tarnished brass doorknob, the one from my bedroom door, removed during the conversion and apparently preserved despite multiple property renovations. Seemed fitting, he explained. The entrance to where everything began. I turned the doorknob in my hand, feeling its weight in history. Entrances and exits, openings and closures. The spaces between that make all the difference. The following day, I added the doorknob to my office display case in Boston, a collection of artifacts marking milestones in our organizational journey. It sat beside the key to Thompson Innovation House, the symbolic first brick from the Palmer Mill renovation, and a framed photograph of our parents standing proudly before the mill in its manufacturing heyday. Together, these objects told a story of transformation spanning generations and geographies, from industrial production to entrepreneurial creation, from personal habitat to economic habitat, from private ownership to community stewardship. As I prepared for a video call with implementation partners from the newest federal sites, I glanced once more at the doorknob, the portal to a space that no longer existed yet had somehow expanded to encompass communities nationwide. They had made my bedroom into a home gym, and I had made their home into my investment property, but collectively, we had transformed that initial conflict into capacity-building infrastructure supporting entrepreneurial dreams across America. tSeeItComing. Bedroom dispute that started everything had been resolved long ago, but its true resolution wasn't found in property rights or financial settlements. It was realized in the thousands of entrepreneurs who now had spaces to pursue their visions, the communities experiencing economic renewal, and the siblings who had discovered that the most valuable conversion isn't a physical space, but of perspective, seeing in conflict not just the potential for resolution, but for revolution. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now, and hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.